What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're going to be doing another live uh, tennis lineup build for DFS. And again, I can't promise you're going to do too many of these, but fortunately, the timing is just so perfect for this particular slate start and where I am in my schedule for this last couple of days that I was able to do it. Now, for those of you that are true DFS members or follow me through any of these videos, you will see that this will be the last stream from this location, going back to Linkoping, so to speak. And thanks everybody for bearing with me while I've operated on with much less monitor space than I was used to for doing these streams. Nonetheless, so what we're going to do is basically what I do every day when I have time. And we're going to take a look at the projections, and then we're going to build and just kind of experiment with different ways of building. Because again, nobody knows for sure what the best thing to do is. And you have access to all these tools and all these different options. And you all learn as I learn, and I hopefully learn from you guys as well. So let's first, again, let me share my screen. And again, even the screen sharing is pretty bad with this setup, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, so first we're going to take a look at the projections. And the good thing about today's slate is that it's really big, meaning that we're not going to have to worry, too much about uniqueness and things like that. You can almost make the case that you could just play your top lineups and just kind of be done with it. The problem with that is that projections are so tight, no matter where you go to get them, whether you do them yourself, whether you go to Roto Grinders or Stochastic or wherever else you go to get your projections. It's just so easy to do tennis projections that the difference between any of them is going to be very small. So if you're playing against anybody who puts even a dime of capital into their research, you're not going to be able to get too big of an edge with projections. However, I still try, and I've been getting pretty good at it, both on the projection side and the ownership side. But the one thing I'm still noticing from an ownership perspective is that, and this is pretty much for every sport, but tennis also, is that the best plays are just more highly owned than people think they're going to be. And the only question is, what does that mean? Like who the best plays? And with tennis, it's always these, the first bits of value that you can find really just get crammed relative to how much you would think they would. So the way I rate them is this kind of weird thing called Sheets Value Score, which kind of combines both fantasy points and points per dollar. And what I found is the first group of dudes, or dudettes that are not that expensive, that are up here, are the ones that really get owned more than we think. So somebody like Veronica or Kekmanovic or even Greek Spure, these guys are, whatever their projected ownership is here, it's probably not a bad idea to increase it. And that's what I'm usually going to do. I don't know if I have time to do it today, but what we can do is always check. And what I always do at the end of each, when the slate locks, is I compare my ownerships to actual ownerships and see where I was off. And it's almost always this kind of range here. Like the best values are always just higher owned than people think. So, I mean, the other thing is that on this particular slate, it takes quite a while to get down to these guys as far as their rankings go. Normally, when you sort it by at least my metrics in this way, you see a couple of guys around here, but today you're not getting it. So it's going to be a tough slate, honestly. and it's going to be a big slate. So I don't believe that you need to get too crazy with your uniqueness. I think you're going to get there naturally. So that would be my first observation here. The second thing is let's go ahead and build, what I consider the very, baseline thing that you can do, like right now in DFS. I was talking about this with James McCool yesterday about how things have changed so much over the last, several years, I guess, but where it wasn't too long ago that if you had an optimizer, you had an edge. And now if you're just running an optimizer, you're almost dead money. You have to have some kind of sim product or some kind of advanced optimizer that at the very least attempts to calculate ownership into the equations. And so for me, I mean, if someone asks me, if I want to play like GPPs and play a bunch of lineups or whatever, like what's the least I can do? I mean, the least you can do, as far as I'm concerned, is get a decent bunch of projections, but build a bunch of lineups with an optimizer like SaberSim, and run some variation of contest simulations where you compare your line field is going to do. And then I think at this point, it's probably baseline to also do some form of diversification. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe people are not that good yet. Maybe it's not standard to do that, but I feel that it is. And so at the very least, you want to build a bunch of lineups and make sure they're not exactly the same. Make sure that there's, at least, maybe two players difference between lineups. That's the whole min uniques thing, and then being as diverse as possible without affecting your entire portfolio. And that's something that you can do. And now you have this portfolio diversification tool by SaberSim that will attempt to do this for you. So it's there's quite a bit of there's quite a bit that you can do here. But at the very least, let's run some projections and run some lineups. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually upload my own projections in here. Again, the difference that you're going to get, as far as I'm concerned, between projection sets is very small. But I think, again, as long as I'm going to be a little bit different than SaberSim or the main sites, I think I'm, that's pretty good. Do it that way. So the first thing I'm going to click here is automatically create custom fields from ownership. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a field that we believe is going to represent what people play based on our ownership projections. Again, normally SaberSim does that for you, and they will do that for you. They will create a contest field based on its own ownership projections, but I feel as though I can do a little bit better in tennis. In most sports, I cannot, but I think in tennis, I could do a little bit better. So it creates this field, and you'll see already that I have, when you go into the contest tabs, I'm going to have my choice of what field to use as my contest sim field. And I'm going to pick for the lottery, which you have 60 entries in, you'll see. I am going to pick the most recent set of lineups that I just created as far as a field lineup. I'm still going to keep the high stakes single entry field, whatever that is that SaberSim created, and the medium stakes single entry one for those particular contests like Breakpoint and the qualifier, only because my ownership projections are specifically for the lottery. So if I am going to replace SaberSims, it's got to only be for this one. I am going to try to check back for questions from time to time and see if there's anything. No, good, okay. So what we're going to do is now we're going to build lineups, and normally I would say you only need to build like 2,000 whatever for tennis, but because you have a big slate, I mean, let's build a full 5,000 for this. I'm not going to make any of the changes to min salary, max salary. We're just going to build this, and I just want to kind of describe to you what's going on here, right? So it's taking our projections, our ownership, and our field lineups, and it's doing the following. It's building 5,000 lineups, and then it's ranking them in some way. Okay. And the way it's ranking them at the very beginning is by expected ROI for each particular contest that we are comparing our lineups to. I showed you there was 3 different fields that they were going to compare these lineups to, and um, we don't need to do this. And now you see it's running these sims like 0 of 3, and it's going to go 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. And then what it's going to be doing is it's going to then try to figure out how to apportion those lineups to these contests. Okay, so you see this up here on the right. It says diversifying lineups. So that's the thing I discussed earlier, is that it's not only putting the lineups in the right contest, but it's also diversifying them in some way that, the lineups in the line painter know what's being played in the breakpoint, etc. So what I want to do is I want to show you like some of the differences between what your builds can look like depending on um what type of whatchamacallit, what type of settings you use. Because right now we're using this portfolio diversification tool here. So we'll save this, and just for fun, let's save this, and then we'll enter it. And then what I want to do is I want to compare what these exposures are compared to maybe if we just use min unique. So like right now, in our contests, let's just take a look. In exposure, we have 42% Maychak, 38% Veronica, 38% Riley Opelkic, and then 38% Kekmanovic. So we try to remember this a little bit. So let's see how this compares to how this would look if instead of using this portfolio setting, we use this one like unique setting. So let's just say instead of that, let's just say we want min uniques 2, like for example, okay, in the breakpoint. Well, the breakpoint doesn't matter, right? Because it's only one lineup, right? But in the line painter, it is going to matter. So it's going to be min uniques 2 across this entire pool here. And then when you do that, like you see this incredible difference, right? So here you have 73% Veronica, 67% Opelka, 54% Grokspure, right? So um, that's huge, right? So just depending on what type of portfolio diversification tool that you use, it's going to impact your entire portfolio. Okay. What did we say this was before? So before, what did we have? Like we had Maychek at the top, but here, I mean, where is Maychek even? I mean, only 13%. Only 13% Maychek when we went by just straight min uniques. Where if we use this portfolio diversification tool that SaberSim is laying on us, we're getting all of Maychek. So you have access to all these tools, but again, these decisions along the way make like it's really important. And just again, I made this up, min uniques 2. Let's, instead of min uniques 2, how about we met min uniques 3 and see how that changed everything. So now, we're getting, a little bit more of a crunch up here up top, but likewise, you still have a good amount of Veronica compared to when we're using this portfolio diversification tool. We're getting less, So again, I wish I had the answer as what you use. Now I'll tell you what I do. I boy, I tend to trust the SaberSim portfolio diversification settings just because it is new, and they usually don't roll anything out without having done some back testing. So I'm probably inclined to just go with that, but I want to try a couple of other things. Just check for questions real quick. Don't have any good. The other thing I want to do is use this that Pater portfolio manager using that diversity score that we talked about yesterday. So let's this is what I want to do. How do I want to rate these? Let's download these lineups, and we're doing the whole lineup set here. We're not even just doing the top whatever. This is like all 5,000 lineups that we created. And then what we're going to do is we want to sort these. Now we're going to have to see how much time. Oh, we have plenty of time. It's 10:30. I want to sort these by ROI just for the lottery. Okay. See line painter ROI right here. Okay. And we don't need to do all these. Let's take like our top like 150. Okay, so let's do this, and then we will hit shift, boom, get rid of these. And then what we want to do, we want to upload those to the portfolio manager. We have to clean it up a little bit. So this is just the format. So let's delete this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go save as recent, and we're going to save this to this file. We're going to call it Pater 729, okay, for the hell of it. So then what we're going to do is we go into Pater, into Portfolio Manager, and we have to do a couple of things. We have to tell it, we have to give it, upload the CSVs so that it knows what each player means as far as like a slate ID or whatever. So I just use the DK salaries file that you can get from DraftKings. And then I'm going to put my projection set up here. That would be right over here. And again, there's a template that you can use. I don't feel like launching that, but there's a template. Then you have to fill it out in the right way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload these top 300, or excuse me, these top 150 ROI lineups. And then we're going to take a look at all these. And we did a whole bunch of different whatchamacallit, bits of analysis yesterday. But today, all I want to focus in is on this diversity score. And for no other reason than I just want to see the difference and see what I get if I start by doing SaberSim and start by using the top ROI lineups and then just sorting by diversity score here and see what this is going to look like. So let's put this. I'm going to put these lineups into the lottery. And just to see how that impacts that, the exposure. I'm not saying what's right or wrong. Okay. So the way we can look at it a lot of different ways. We can look at it from here, but let's use the entry editor. It's good practice to always use the entry editor so that it always remembers what you have. Especially when you do all these multiple builds, it's sometimes hard to keep track. Okay, so now we're going to reveal this, and let's just see what this is going to look like now. So now it's a little bit different. We still are not getting this Maychak. As a matter of fact, when we use, we are getting 20% of him actually. So one noticeable difference when we use this diversity score is that you're getting, a lot of Layla Fernandez you weren't getting before. A lot more Mutet, which we weren't getting before. we're still getting a bunch of Veronica, no matter kind of what we do. So again, it's just a little bit, I don't know, it's just another spin to put on it. So as usual, it's going to depend on what you're feeling. When you have access to all these tools, it can sometimes be somewhat daunting. So another thing you could do is if we were going to do all of these lineups. The other thing that we talked about with James is this lineup edge score, that we really don't want it to get too small. So what we could do is we could start again with these 300, and let's sort by largest to smallest, and we'll just chop out like the bottom. We have 150, so we'll just chop out the anything with, how about, which is negative. How about that? Again, we're just sort of making this up, so let's not do that. Let's just take off the top, take out the bottom 50. And then we could then resort by diversity score here. And then we could put these in. So now we're using a different tool, using a little more of the portfolio manager thing, using this lineup edge score to go along with what we've already done with our ROI score. And again, we could go on and on forever with continuing to whittle these things down. But I think this is probably a good place to kind of stop. So let's take again the top 61 or top 60. That failed. I don't know what that's all about. Download, upload, boom. Put these in. I'll tell you what's also pretty interesting with this new portfolio management tool, and sort of I hope it's going to become a kind of an industry-wide commitment to this, because this is what I've been really looking for like 5 years now, is a commitment to portfolio management, not so much lineup management. And so what I'm wondering is, when you analyze how your lineups did, what your performance is. In the last couple of years, people have really tried to look at the post-contest sims to see what the lineups were simming, as a gauge of how well you played. But I think it's only fair to add some portfolio risk metric as well, as opposed to just seeing how your lineups themselves did. I think the next frontier is going to be how your portfolio of lineups were simming, on a risk-adjusted basis. I don't know whether you call it Sharpe ratio or whatever you want to use to, to gauge your portfolio management skills in DFS. I think some degree of portfolio management metrics have to be used. So let's see what we ended up with here again, just for funsies. Okay, so let's upload the entries. Let's see how we ended up after all that. So we did end up with the Moutet variation. A lot of Moutet, a lot of Leila Fernandez and whatever. But again, I can't stress enough, this idea that you really shouldn't be thinking of your DFS investments in terms of lineups, or certainly in terms of players. I mean, you could certainly think of it in terms of lineups, but the real thing is to think of it in terms of portfolios of lineups. And that's actually a really big deal. Let me just look at one more thing before we accept this as our whatever. Let's just make sure that we're not supposed to dupe anything. Okay, so we have no projected dupes, which is good. we have some degree of now. I could also take off win percentage and finishing percentage, but some of that's just got to be incorporated within the ROI and lineup edge anyway. So we don't want to over correlate. You see, I didn't do anything with the salaries or anything like that. So I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about. No real questions, I think. Let me just hold on. Let me just stop sharing screen. And again, I'll just shout out the various tools that we use here. Obviously, I use SaberSim to build lineups. TrueDFS is the site that I'm, 100% part of, where we put the projections up. We have premium content, and then I'd like to think that our previews are a little bit more, a little bit more advanced than some of the other places. But that's for you guys to decide. I did use PayDirt's portfolio manager tool, which again I'm learning every day how to use. And that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And that's it. Good luck, everybody.